Hello, Reds, and welcome back to Liverpool Latest. I'm your host, Matt. Thank you for joining me, as always. I would like to talk about this right away because I have been seeing a lot of this discourse online about it. I've been seeing hit piece articles, I've been seeing fans disparage this individual, and it seems like in the wake of the loss against United, everybody has been kind of looking for a scapegoat. And one day, and it seems like every time there's a loss, there is a scapegoat player that we have to blame. At one point, it was Mo Salah. Another time, it was Cody Gakpo. At times, Konate. But this time, I believe that this is a bit different. While all criticism is warranted, to outright use a player as a scapegoat for the problems within the club and what's going on the field as like probably one of the sole reasons why the club is not performing is absolutely ridiculous. And that's how I perceive a lot of the discourse that I have read online about Florian Wirtz. Here's the thing. To me, the whole Wirtz is the problem argument is incredibly weak. It's very surface level. Granted, I understand why people are upset about it. It's a huge transfer fee that we had to pay to get him, which was about 100 million. That's no potatoes. It's not cheap. He's an expensive player. What do we get him from, Leverkusen or something? He's an expensive player. And while the output looks good on paper anyway, it's not necessarily the elite performances that we were expecting when he signed with the club. Of course, there have also been periods where he's just completely disappeared in game. So these are all of the arguments that fans use when they're trying to disparage Wirtz for his poor performances on the field or lack of performance on the field. So to me, right away, this is a very classic scapegoat profile argument that to me has little to no legs, and I'm going to tell you why. And that first reason is tactical misuse. Wirtz has been deployed as a false nine or hybrid forward. He has he's not really a natural striker, but for some reason, he is being used at times as a striker in matches, which is not to his best suit. Now, some players had to get shifted around due to injury. I understand that. We've had a lot of those this season. And I feel like those injuries, for some reason, which I very much blame the coaching staff for, because a lot of these injuries, you can't explain to me why players are being so frequently injured on the field. It just does not make any sense to me. All right? So now that we have to misuse players, it's also affecting what's going on week in and week out during the games. And of course, the overloaded midfield roles with a very unclear structure is not doing him any sort of favor whatsoever. So because he's not a pure forward, he is trying to find space to create. He is a space-finding creator. He's not a true forward. But for some reason, we continue to use him in a forward position. And to me, that doesn't make any sense. It doesn't play to his strengths. It doesn't play to his best traits, his movement, his combination play. It doesn't play to literally any of that. So it seems as though Wirtz is being scapegoated because he's being asked to solve problems that he himself did not create. Just because you don't see him doing anything on the field, I don't necessarily consider that to be the fact that he didn't do a good job in the game. Frankly, he doesn't know what he's doing in the game half the time because he's essentially playing two completely different positions constantly. He's kind of stuck between do I do the midfield thing, do I do the false nine? Not to mention that there has been a lot of systemic issues at Liverpool that go far beyond one player. And I've talked about this constantly. It's the lack of identity that the team has. There is no attacking structure. There is no tactical tweaks. It's just Actually, as a matter of fact, there's constant tactical tweaks, and even then, they do absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, they make the team worse, if you ask me. And there's even probably the most egregious of all is the poor cohesion in the final third. There's incredible defensive instability, and there's an absolute squad imbalance because there is an over-reliance on certain players, and when they're not performing, the rest of the tactical output falls flat. I said this very early on in the season. Sending it to Salah all the time is not going to solve a problem. As a matter of fact, it actually emphasized the fact that Salah at times was clearly in some sort of decline when it came to his style of play. So, but for some reason, Slot's tactics early on until that whole big blowout was, let's get the ball to Salah. And when that didn't work, it became, okay, let's try to get the ball to Ekitike. Ekitike did a pretty solid job with that. Then it was, okay, let's have Cody Gakpo do some stuff. And clearly Cody Gakpo was not doing anything. And that was clear as day. So it's just too much change, man. It's too much change that one player who's new to the Premier League probably can't handle right away. It's an absolute, I don't even know, it's a culture shock is the best way I could describe it. The fact that this is being ignored, to be honest with you, is very shocking because not every player is going to be Premier League ready right away. It takes an adaptation period, right? So I fail to understand why players are not understanding this particular aspect, or should I say, I fail to. You know what I'm trying to say. I fail to comprehend how fans do not understand this particular aspect. That is why it's very misplaced with expectations versus what the actual role he should be playing is. And I'm not going to sit here and say he's not fully to blame. I think there are times where he doesn't do anything. It affects the team. But it also comes with a litany of other factors. And it comes with literally all of the players. We can blame any player we want on the field. There is a litany of problems and reasons for why each player isn't necessarily performing as well as they have this season. It all stems from one particular bald individual, but that's a different story for a different time. So if you ask me, I think fans expected too much of a solution to a problem. Liverpool decided to sign a component to what would be an overarching team. Clearly, there's been a idea of what his role should be. And I think Wirtz is a very good player, man. I don't think he's a bad player at all. I just think he needs to take some time. And this upcoming offseason is going to be something that's important for him to pay attention to. I believe he's also taking place in the World Cup. I'm pretty sure Germany's in the World Cup this year, if I am not mistaken. So I think there'll be some good practice for him if that is the case. And if not, well, then that gives him more time to kind of focus on what's going on with Liverpool. So I'm very just tired of this whole scapegoating players because I feel like at the end of the day, it's all just going to go back to Slot because in reality, Slot is the reason why the team is in the shape that it's in. So we can blame any player we want. The fact of the matter is it all stems from the manager. I'm not saying the players shouldn't be I'm not saying players should not be held accountable. They should also be held accountable, but there are factors in there that are out of their control that management handles. So, which reminds me, why is it that Slot even still has a job? You know, I plan on making a much more like in-depth video about this later on in the week, but I would think that when a club has to publicly back a manager every couple of months, in like a very big news release where multiple outlets are continuing to report the same thing, I don't think the manager is very cut out for the job, at least, you know, for the Premier League and for Liverpool. Now, for some reason, Ajax has been approaching Liverpool with the idea to appoint Slot as a manager in the future. And it seems like Liverpool have immediately rebuffed that approach. Once again, signaling a very strong backing, which is unfathomable to me. I don't know how you see the results that he's been giving us this season and say to me he should still be on the manager of the club. Every other club that has struggled this season, or most of the clubs, at least the bigger clubs that have struggled, have at least made some conscious change to their management. Right? Chelsea, United, Tottenham, whether or not they get relegated is still, we don't know for a fact, but Tottenham would try to make a change. A lot of teams, a lot of big name teams had to step in and make a change when things weren't working out the way they wanted it to. But you know who stayed the same? Because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, is Liverpool Football Club with Arne Slot. If you ask me, Slot is not fit to be Liverpool manager. As I mentioned before with the Wirtz argument, a lot of the issues that Wirtz is having comes from Arne Slot and his usage of him. Same thing for many other players on the team. For what I understand, if I'm not mistaken, Ajax is a, I believe it's a Netherlands team. It's an Amsterdam team. So being Dutch, Slot is automatically closer to his family members, people he loves. It seems as though every now and again he has to leave Liverpool to go and visit his family, which I'm sure is difficult for him to constantly go between two different places. If you ask me, if it's a personal matter, it makes sense for him to go to Ajax. And I'm not saying that as a Slot hater. I'm not saying that as a football fan. I'm saying this as a human being. If family is part of the reason why he's been struggling a little bit, because he has to keep making trips back and forth during off times of the week or longer periods of a break, like an international break or something, I would think that the best option would be to just go back home and manage a team that's in your country. You get to be close to your family. You get to see them every day. You get to go to work. You still get to do what you love to do, which is anything football related. I don't see how that wouldn't work out for everyone involved. It works out for Slot on a personal matter and probably a professional matter, to be fair, because you ask me, if he continues to serve as manager for Liverpool, it's only going to continue to stain him as a manager going into the future as far as what his capabilities are. So if anything, it's going to help him professionally. Two, it's going to help the club because now they actually get to go and look for a proper manager that's going to help take them to the place that they need to as far as player development and better performances. And perhaps some silverware, depending on the competitions we find ourselves in. So if you ask me, this is the perfect exit route for Slot. This is the absolute best possible outcome for everyone involved. For some reason, Liverpool are dead set on the idea of him continuing to manage the club. And I have a few short months until I go see Liverpool and Wrexham at Yankee Stadium in July, okay? I have a few short months. I cannot fathom what type of football I'm going to be watching in a preseason game if Arne Slot is still head of my club when I go to watch that game. I cannot fathom it. But there's a whole bunch of other arguments I can bring into this as well. I don't think I need to really harp on it too much. The fact of the matter is, I think Liverpool outright rejecting Ajax was not a necessarily smart decision. I think that it works out better for them than they think it does. But maybe they're just so hell-bent on trying to be proven right that perhaps they would rather run the club into the ground. No idea. Speaking of getting run into the ground, it seems like Chelsea is also in a very, very tough position in their own right. They suffered a 3-1 home defeat against Nottingham Forest, which is continuing to damage their momentum, facing Liverpool in the upcoming game. This also confirms that mathematically they cannot finish within the top 5 and removes them directly from Champions League qualification. Of course, the only remaining path to the Champions League qualification is very, very highly conditional, which is them finishing 6th and another team winning the Europa League. But the fact of the matter is this: Chelsea's pain could be our gain, because they have a lot of injuries, big-time injuries that are going to affect them in this upcoming game. Jesse Derry, who suffered a serious head collision, he required on-field treatment. He was taken to a hospital, reported conscious and stable, thankfully. That's a very good news that for his well-being. Robert Sanchez was involved in another head collision. Jesus Christ, what is going on over there? He was substituted and will undergo concussion protocols ahead of the match at Anfield. And Pedro Neto and Alejandro Garnacho will also miss the match with minor training knocks, which are not necessarily expected to be serious. So they might be there, they might not be there. I don't know for a fact yet. There's some potential returns in Levi Colwill and Reece James, but that will be very, I guess, up to game time decision when it comes to team news. So as far as how this affects Liverpool, the tactical impact could be very serious. Chelsea could sit back in deeper defensive positions, which we have struggled with all season from an offensive perspective. And it certainly plays into Liverpool's hands of not being able to control the tempo early and exploit lack of defensive rhythm. Now, again, this could work both ways. Maybe Chelsea is a brick wall. Maybe we find a way to break through it. Both things could be right at the same time. I have so little faith in Liverpool now towards the end of the season that I don't believe that we can beat Chelsea. Even with all of this news, that they have players injured, they're having horrible momentum going into this game, I do not believe that we can beat Chelsea. At least not right now. Perhaps with more news coming up about the game in the next few days, which I will report upon, maybe I'll feel a little differently. But as it stands right now on Tuesday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo, why do I not have a margarita in my hand? Because I will definitely need to drink watching this match. I cannot tell you if I believe that Liverpool will win this game. So, on paper, it's a very positive thing. This is the best possible scenario we have had all season, or at least the second half of the season. The fact of the matter is, are we going to capitalize on it? I think not. Truthfully. I do not believe in the slightest that we can do it right now. But it seems like all the stars are aligning for that to work in our favor. We will soon find out. Or we will lead to another unacceptable performance, which is what Virgil van Dijk labeled this season as in a recent interview with BBC. Not that kind of BBC, you know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, he had a very, he had a very strong, unfiltered admission that after the 3-2 loss in Man United, it's been a very, very hard time. He's emphasized that there are no excuses and full accountability within the squad that they take, which I personally don't know how you could take full accountability at this point. I think everybody needs to be everybody does need to be accountable, but I find that the more they say it, the less I believe it. Oh, we take ourselves accountable in this. Well, what happened the other 18, 19 times? Or the other 17, 18 times that we lost a match? How accountable did you take yourself then? Because clearly nothing's been done to fix that issue. But I rest my case on that. it's been a very poor title defense. I mean, 18 defeats in all competitions, 11 league losses as reigning champions. The worst title defense trend since Leicester City in 2016 and 2017. Where's Leicester City now? Relegated to League One. Imagine that. Talk about an absolute fall from grace. But the only thing that's going to salvage this season is a Champions League qualification. That's the only thing that this season can, the only positive that this season can have at this rate is confirming that we make it to the Champions League. If we don't, something's got to be done about upper management as well as team management. But Van Dijk goes on to highlight that there's a lot of internal overhaul. There's a lot of work being done behind the scenes as far as to fix the structural issues, not just performances. Response to training criticism in the sense that he rejects claims of the poor work ethic, that the players are quote-unquote adults managing limited time off, and suggests rest can be beneficial. And he references Pep's approach with how he handles his team and how he manages his team. I'm not going to lie to you here. I've seen a lot of back and forth about the whole training criticisms. And I'm not going to lie to you. I agree with Van Dijk to some extent. But clearly something is going on that the team is just a little bit too lax. And it shows up on the field. And I think that's why it's so easy for opposing sides to concede against us. And it's frustrating as a fan. I bring up that kicked puppy, comparison from the previous video. That's how we feel. We feel like a kicked puppy because the club does not fight. They do nothing to prevent these issues from happening. And if they are trying so hard to fix these issues, why do they keep happening? Why does it happen with set pieces? Set pieces have gotten better. After they fired that set piece coach, I can admit that set pieces were a vast improved aspect of our game compared to what it was in the first half of the season. Hell, even the first quarter of the season. Okay? But there have been other things that have needed work, not just set pieces. Clearly, the behind-the-scenes work that Van Dijk is emphasizing on clearly is not being worked on enough, if you want my honest opinion. I think that this team needs to have a very long look in the mirror at the end of this season, and they need to determine what they want to be. I think the club as a whole needs to look at themselves in the mirror and say, how do we prevent a season like this from happening again? I'm not sure if they have the answer to that right now. I certainly don't think Virgil van Dijk has the answer. If anything, I don't believe Virgil has been a stellar leader by any means. I think a lot of the times he could have done a better job this season with his leadership skills. And the whole, everybody is held accountable. We take what we do seriously. Nobody's slacking off. I don't see that. I genuinely cannot fathom that being true, what he says. I do not trust Virgil van Dijk when he speaks to the media and things like this come out of his mouth. Because if it was that serious, we would see improvement. But no, we see glimpses of hope, and then we go back into the same patterns again. It's like an addict. You take him to rehab, he does the 30 days, him or her. Let's be gender fluid here. You take the addict to rehab, they do the 30 days, they come back, good couple of months, then falls off the horse, gets really bad again, another intervention, send them for 60, so on and so forth. It's a never-ending cycle. And I'm not shitting on addicts. I'm just saying that's what it feels like. If anything, the best comparison I can give is Christopher Moltisanti from Sopranos. How many times did he fuck up? Liverpool Football Club are essentially Christopher Moltisanti from Sopranos, as it stands right now, minus the drugs, because that's obviously a problem. That would be a very big problem. But my point is that no matter how hard they try, something is going to bring them back to old habits. And that is evident for me this season. And that is the end of today's Liverpool Latest. So I leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed. I hope that you leave your thoughts down below. I hope that you leave a like or some sort of rating on the show, because I appreciate if you could. And most importantly, I want you to subscribe. I want you to follow the show. Why would you miss out on this every single day? I'm bringing bars over here this week, man. Kick puppies, Chris Moltisanti, junkies. Like I got bars this week, man. I got comparisons, the likes of which no one's ever seen before. I think me living in the South, coming from Jersey, has actually helped my analogies and my slang a little bit. But why not subscribe for more? That's all I have to say. Because when you join the Liverpool Latest family, you know that you never walk alone. So, come on and join us. Join the family. We'll see you on the next one.